I ran from my ex and accidentally threw myself into the arms of a mafia boss. Zoe only needed one elevator, 1 second, one stranger to pretend he knew her. But when Giorgio Castellaneta wrapped his hand around her waist, her ex backed away, like he had just seen death itself. The problem. Giorgio didn't let go when the elevator doors closed. And when the hotel manager turned pale and called him Don, Zoe realized she hadn't escaped danger. She had just upgraded it. Let's look at this piece by piece, shall we? Our girl Lena just wanted to drop off an 18th century manuscript at a fancy hotel and grab a quiet coffee afterward. Simple, right? Instead, fate hands her a nightmare, her abusive ex-boyfriend in the flesh. Panicking, she backs into an elevator, which is basically a steel cage, and begs a total stranger for help. Enter Vittorio. The man isn't a savior. He's an apex predator. He doesn't just hide her. He immediately grabs her waist, locking her in place, staring down the ex like he's picking out a coffin for the guy. That's the exact moment the real trap snaps shut on her. Life is funny that way sometimes. The person you think is saving you is just the bigger monster, claiming you. The ex backs off immediately, recognizing a guy who could actually end him. Lena lets out this shaky, nervous laugh, just trying to break the unbearable tension. But Vittorio? He stays dead still. The doors slide shut, and his hand doesn't move an inch from her waist. Later, when the hotel staff practically trip over themselves in terror, addressing him, the cold truth finally hits her. She just traded a domestic bully for a highly lethal, organized captor. Her mind fractures, flashing back to that morning. A bakery opens at 6:30, and she makes sure to step inside at exactly 6:32. It's a harsh truth. We all face eventually. We obsess over the tiny details we can control, just to ignore the massive fears we can't. Lena anchors her entire fragile existence to the most boring morning routines. The guy in the gray apron, the smell of fresh bread, the warmth of her coffee. These are the tiny life rafts keeping her from completely drowning in her own anxiety. She keeps pushing up a pair of broken glasses, a painful souvenir. From a brutal winter back in Philadelphia, she tells herself the crooked frames are a warning to the world, that she's broken goods, too damaged to bother with. But here's the thing about carrying yourself like a victim. When you already believe you're worthless, you forget how to fight back. When a real predator steps out of the shadows and decides he owns you now, she actually calls her miserable living setup the most discreet palace in the world. We're talking about a freezing 4th floor walk up, windows rattling in the wind, and neighbors banging on a piano all day. She romanticizes this awful, lonely box because it gives her the illusion of safety. Nobody has her address, and her isolation is as absolute. She makes her way across the city, walking into the rare bookshop at 7:45 to face her boss, Madame Aurelili. Lena has built a life totally stripped of real human connection, trading love for predictability. It teaches you something sad, but true. Sometimes people will gladly choose a freezing, empty room over the terrifying risk of letting someone new into their heart. Her boss is this intimidating woman with sharp white hair, just another person casually dominating our girl. She calls her Zoe, a fake name Lena uses to cut the cord on her past trauma. Madame Aureli tosses her a new job, openly mocking her in the process. Lena just takes the hit, firing back with a self-deprecating joke. She abandoned her self-worth the day she ran away to that rotting attic. The job is a hand delivery of an old manuscript to a rich buyer at the Plaza Hotel. Instantly, you can see the panic wash over her. She sucks in a sharp breath, completely terrified. It reminds us that trauma doesn't care about logic. Just the name of a fancy building is enough to make a person feel like they're fighting for their life. That anxiety quickly spirals into a quiet, crushing panic. To a woman living on pennies, a 5-star hotel feels like an armed fortress with doors too heavy to even push open. Yet, her stubborn pride kicks in. She puts on a brave face and promises her boss she'll have it done before lunch. The old woman hands her cab fare with a nasty warning, eat something, because a place like that will swallow a hungry girl whole. Lena takes the jab like a needle to the ribs. She forces her mind away from the fear and focuses entirely on the dark velvet folder and her white cotton gloves. We all do this when we're scared, right? We obsess over the task in front of us, hoping the work will drown out the roaring fear in our heads. You've got to watch how obsessively she prepares this trip. She straightens the papers with this manic precision, totally trapped in the tragic delusion that organizing a folder will somehow protect her from a chaotic world. It's only when she's forced to sit still in the back of the taxi that her buried memories claw their way out. Thoughts of Bastien, her former French fiancé, flood her mind. He's the monster she ran from, the reason she crossed an ocean 2 years ago. The guy grew up as the son of a massive lawyer, completely poisoned by money and power. He believed he could take whatever he wanted without ever paying the price. True villains rarely look like monsters. They usually look like men who've never been told no. Bastien was practically a textbook study in breaking a human spirit. He loved to publicly humiliate her, casually listing her flaws while passing the wine at family dinners. He isolated her piece by piece, checking her phone, picking her clothes, chasing away her friends. When she finally found the guts to leave him, he just laughed, completely sure she belonged to him forever. That laugh made her sleep with the hallway light on for 10 straight years. The cab pulls up to the massive stone front of the plaza. She pushes up her taped glasses, holding that velvet folder against her chest like a cheap shield, and walks right into the jaws of a trap. Escaping your past is never as simple as just changing your zip code. Stepping into that lobby, she doesn't see luxury, she sees an open battlefield. The marble floors echo every single click of her heels, making her feel completely exposed and hunted. The heavy smell of expensive jasmine makes her stomach turn. She just wants to drop off the package and vanish. But the second the front desk clerk tells her to wait, her whole world shatters. Before she even turns her head, she hears it. A deep, familiar laugh rolling out of the restaurant hallway. Bastien. Her abuser is standing right there, having a casual drink. The sheer, impossible bad luck of it fries her brain on the spot. It's a cruel reminder that the universe doesn't care about the math. Your worst nightmare can always find you. Stick with me here, because you're about to see what true terror looks like. Lena freezes completely. She watches Bastien standing there looking totally relaxed, which makes the absolute chaos, exploding in her own head, feel 100 times worse. The massive lobby suddenly feels like a shrinking box. He's barely 20 meters away. If he turns his head even a fraction, she's dead. She prays the heavy wooden desk will just open up and swallow her whole. She literally stops breathing, the exact same paralyzing freeze. A deer gets right before the wolf strikes. The clerk is still talking, but the words are drowned out by the screaming alarms in her head. Sometimes the scariest prison in the world is just the space inside your own frozen body. Words mean nothing to her now. Her brain flips a primal switch, turning her into a terrified animal, mapping out an escape route. She frantically scans the room for a stairwell or a kitchen door. Her eyes lock onto a short hallway with 3 mirrored elevators. It's heartbreaking how effectively trauma trains a person to calculate escape angles in the blink of an eye. She mumbles a ghost of a thank you to the clerk and moves. She wants to run, but knows sprinting will only make the predator chase her. She slides into the furthest elevator, violently smashing the 5th floor button, clutching her little velvet folder like it could actually stop a bullet. Fear has a twisted way of making survival experts out of ordinary people. In her panicked mind, Bastien's laugh sounds like it's bouncing off the walls, getting closer by the second. She starts begging the universe, silently screaming at the elevator doors to just close. But these are luxury hotel doors, designed to slide shut at a painfully slow, elegant pace, and it feels like pure torture. Hanging in that agonizing wait, she catches a shadow out of the corner of her eye. A massive guy in a sharp, dark suit is standing right behind her in the mirrored reflection. She was so hyper-focused on the monster outside that she never even noticed him. Her blood runs entirely cold. The devil she knows is out in the lobby, but an absolute mystery is locked inside this tiny metal box with her. Sometimes the unknown is deadlier than the threat you can see. She processes this new guy in blurry snapshots, the sharp cut of his jaw, the heavy watch on his wrist. But the most terrifying thing is the dead heavy silence rings into the space, and the doors are still wide open. Lena loses whatever tiny shred of rational thought she had left. When you've spent 10 years sleeping with the lights on, you don't have the luxury of thinking things through. Her shattered nerves make a desperate choice. She's going to use this massive stranger as a human shield, hoping a public scene will stop Bastian from dragging her into a private hell. She throws herself backward, slamming into the man, dropping her folder, and begging for her life in a broken whisper. Desperation will always make us trade logic for the slimmest chance at survival. Let's hit pause, guys. Picture this playing out on the big screen. Zoe completely frantic, desperate to escape a creep named Bastian. She crashes into Giorgio, treating this mountain of a man like a convenient prop, and plants a clumsy kiss on his jaw as the doors open. But here is the brutal irony of fate. She thinks she is pulling a fast trick to survive. Instead of pushing her away, Giorgio just clamps his massive hand onto her waist, trap closed. Even drowning in panic, Zoe feels that horrifying realization drop into her stomach. She hasn't escaped a bad situation. She has literally walked into the arms of the devil, and he has already claimed her. Sometimes, the exact thing we do to save ourselves is what seals our ultimate doom. Watch how effortlessly Giorgio flips the script. He slides his arm around her shoulders and drops his chin to her temple, like they have been lovers for 10 years. Then comes the voice. He murmurs something in soft, liquid Italian. Zoe doesn't speak a word of it, but her brain instantly translates the tone. It is the quiet, terrifying hum of a man who orders people buried before breakfast. And look at Bastian out in the hallway. The guy freezes completely. You can see the exact second his brain processes who he is looking at. His eyes dart from Zoe to the apex predator standing behind her, and all that predatory swagger evaporates. It is a harsh truth of the world, isn't it? No matter how tough the bully acts, there is always a much darker monster waiting in the wings. You and I have probably both felt that exact kind of tension, right? Bastian instantly hits reverse, throwing his hands up in a hollow surrender and slapping on a fake smile as he backs away from a violence he cannot match. The heavy doors slide shut and the trap clicks. Bastian is gone, but the real nightmare is standing right behind her. Zoe is paralyzed, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. The silence in that tiny elevator is absolutely suffocating. It is thick with the scent of expensive leather and dark sandalwood. She thought she was using him as a shield, but the shield just turned into a cage. It really makes you think about how quickly our safe harbors can become our prisons might, if we are not paying closest enough attention. And right here is where her brain just absolutely short-circuits. The sheer panic overloads her system, and she starts letting out this frantic, nervous laughter, babbling in 3 different languages to try and act normal. It is that high-pitched chatter we all do when we are secretly falling apart inside. But when she finally tries to step back, she hits a solid brick wall. Giorgio does not let go. He doesn't use brutal force, which honestly makes it 10 times more terrifying. He is just utterly immovable. It is the absolute chilling stillness of a guy who has decided you are his now, and your opinion simply does not exist. Life teaches us pretty fast that the quietest kind of control is always the hardest to break away from. So she finally stops spinning and actually looks at the guy holding her hostage. And guys, this part is just dripping with irony. She catalogs every detail with this hyper-focused survival instinct. He is in his 30s, rock solid, with a tiny scar hinting at a violent past, and eyes empty of warmth. Then there is the suit, custom dark wool, with a family crest embroidered right on the cuff. She only notices it because his hand is still locked around her waist, like an iron shackle. Then, he speaks to her in English, asking her name with a soft, polite tone that carries absolutely zero human empathy. It is wild how the most dangerous people rarely look like monsters. They are usually the ones wearing the nicest suits, hiding their true nature in plain sight. She manages to keep her voice steady and gives him her first name, Zoe. But when he waits for her last name, she bites her tongue. It is a tiny, useless rebellion. Notice his reaction here. He just tilts his head, giving her this look that pretends to be respect, but is actually a cold measurement of her spirit. Then he pulls his hand away, agonizingly slowly. It is a total psychological power play, reminding her that he decides when she moves. The doors ding open on the 5th floor, and the scene is wild. There is a literal guard wearing the exact same crest, and the hotel manager is right behind him, sweating bullets. It is a bitter pill to swallow, realizing your tiny acts of defiance mean absolutely nothing when the world around you is rigged. Let's watch how the entire world just bends the knee to this guy. The hotel manager literally goes pale, blood draining right out of his face the second he sees the predator. He starts stammering pathetic apologies, his hands shaking as he mumbles the name, Don Castellaneta. Down the hall, a room service guy completely abandons his cart and bolts. Even the receptionist hits a silent panic button. Seeing all these normal people absolutely vibrating with pure dread is what finally shatters her denial. The sheer terror radiating off everyone else locks in the reality of her nightmare. It is a hard lesson, but sometimes the reactions of the people around us tell us way more about our own danger than our personal instincts ever could. This is the exact moment everything clicks for her, and it hits like a freight train. She is just an academic, but she knows enough to put the pieces together. The name Castellaneta, the title of Dawn, the deep Sicilian roots. It all points to a lethal crime syndicate. Suddenly, her velvet folder of historical manuscripts sitting on the floor feels like a complete joke compared to the threat of a shallow grave. She lets out a pathetic whisper, saying she really needs to go. Meanwhile, the giant guard leans down and picks up her scattered papers with delicate care. It is deeply unsettling, seeing a guy who breaks legs handle paper like glass. The things we value most often become completely meaningless the second our actual survival is on the line. You really have to appreciate the absolute arrogance of what he does next. He doesn't even acknowledge her saying she wants to leave. It is like she didn't speak. Instead, he just starts giving orders to clear the entire floor, demanding a private room, and acting like he owns the very oxygen in the building. Then he looks at her folder and tells his enforcer, Vincenzo, to take it. Vincenzo grabs her life's work with the dead-eyed efficiency of a hitman packing a sniper rifle. He doesn't care about her passion. He is just securing an asset. And just like that, her property is gone. It is a deeply uncomfortable truth that people with real power never need to shout to take what you own. They just reach out, and everyone steps out of the way. Guys, my heart actually breaks for her, right here. She is desperately trying to find an exit, hoping this is a misunderstanding she can laugh off later. She starts spinning this painfully obvious lie about her bosses and wrong deliveries, clawing at any shred of normal life. She puts on that tough city girl armor, trying to look brave while falling apart inside. In a final, desperate move, she literally offers to just vanish. She promises to take the back stairs, to pretend she never saw his face, to erase herself from his universe. We all do this when backed into a corner, don't we? We try to negotiate with the hurricane. We try to use the rules of a fair world to save ourselves, forgetting that the storm simply does not care about our rules. Stick with me here, because this is where his control gets truly terrifying. He just stands there, letting her burn through all her desperate little lies. He watches her with the cold patience of an adult, letting a child tire themselves out. When she runs out of breath, he locks eyes with her. She tries to use logic, arguing that the creep downstairs knows nothing about him, but Giorgio calmly takes her naive view of the world and crushes it. He tells her exactly how it will go. 2 hours to find her name, 4 hours to find out her entire life story. He is drawing the net tight, cutting off every escape route. The hardest pill to swallow in life is realizing that your clever, logical plans mean absolutely nothing when someone else holds all the cards. He just keeps tightening the screws, pouring on that psychological pressure. He lays out the brutal math of her survival. In 6 hours, her stalker sells her out, and in 8 hours, she is completely gone. Unless, of course, she lets him protect her. Do you see the twisted irony here? The guy playing the hero is the exact same monster she should run right from. That is the birth of the trauma bond. When she weakly tries to say, she can take care of herself, the words fall flat. He doesn't even look angry. He just stares at her, mapping out all her broken pieces, calculating the exact minute she is going to surrender. It is a bitter realization. But sometimes our worst enemies are the ones who convince us they are the only people who can keep us safe. And now we reach the absolute point of no return. Let's pause and really look at this. He stares down at her like he has broken 1,000 people before and knows exactly how many seconds she has left. He drops his voice, reminding her that she was the one who grabbed him first. Then, he simply tells her where she is going to stand. This is the exact moment her mind fractures. Underneath all that blind terror, a tiny, dark part of her brain actually feels a rush at being so totally dominated. She hates herself for feeling it. She resents her own body for betraying her. But as he casually calls for his men, it is already over. The most terrifying monsters are never the ones who break our bones. They are the ones who make us lock ourselves in their cages. Let's hit pause right here and look at Zoe. This is the exact second her entire life gets hijacked, and the crazy part? There is zero screaming. The Capo, playing the megalomaniac to absolute perfection, steals her freedom without even raising his voice. He just sits there and calmly dictates a fake story about her being sick. You can see Zuzi try to fight back, to push the words out, but the sheer weight of the trauma just paralyzes her throat. It is brutally quiet. And here is the simple truth you have to understand about people like him. The most dangerous monsters in the world do not need to yell to make you obey. They just speak quietly and let your own terror do all the heavy lifting. You and I need to really look at this scene. Zoe asks where they are going, and her voice is just this shattered, humiliating whisper. She gets in the car simply because a narcissist spent 5 seconds orchestrating her complete surrender. Giorgio sits next to her, checking his expensive watch like he is waiting for a train, not kidnapping a woman. He casually drops a location where her boss cannot reach them. It takes Zoe a full city block just to realize what he said, and another block for the pure horror to set in. During the whole extraction, she never once said her boss's last name. Giorgio already knew it. The hard lesson here? Silence never protects you from the predators who already live in the dark. Look at Giorgio sitting there, hand resting on his knee, staring out at the Paris streets, like he owns the pavement and everyone walking on it. Zoe does not ask any more questions. It is actually heartbreaking to watch. She regresses right back to a 15-year-old girl, burying her panic deep inside. Her brain is literally screaming at her to just pack the trauma away for another day. The car rolls down into this massive underground bunker, and Vincenzo opens her door. It looks like a polite gesture, right? Wrong. It is a leash, snapping tight. She steps out and follows them into a private elevator shooting straight up to his penthouse. The iron gate just slammed shut. The life lesson? Politeness from a captor is just a velvet-lined trap. The second those elevator doors slide open, the penthouse just swallows her alive. The acoustics in this place are terrifying. It is that heavy, suffocating silence where, if you scream, the expensive wallpaper just absorbs the sound. Giorgio takes off his coat with this sickeningly normal, domestic vibe, like they are just a married couple coming home. He points to a bedroom and tells her to ask Vincenzo for whatever she needs, but if she wants to leave, she has to ask him. When she nervously asks what happens if she sneaks out, he does not even get mad. He just gives her this cold, patient look of a prison warden. The lesson here is chilling. True monsters do not lose their temper. They just calmly promise you a nightmare. Zoe goes straight to her assigned room, sits on the edge of that massive bed and just stares blankly at the ceiling. I want you to really notice what she does not do here. She does not shed a single tear. Crying is a luxury you only get when you are safe, and she knows there are no locks on her door. Sleep is completely out of the question. Her nervous system is totally fried, stuck in survival mode, so she spends her very first night listening to the house. She times Vincenzo's heavy boots walking the hallway every 40 minutes. By 2 a.m, she is tracking every distant noise. The brutal lesson here is that when your safety is ripped away, your brain will turn your own fear into a weapon just to keep you breathing. Okay, this part hurts to watch. It is morning too, and the trauma bonding is already sinking its teeth in. She finds fresh coffee, expensive butter, and a handwritten note from him on the counter telling her not to open the door for anyone. His handwriting is gorgeous, completely hiding the psychopath underneath. And what does she do? She hides the note in her pocket. Why? Because right now, that piece of paper is the only proof she even exists. It is a bitter pill to swallow, but here is the life lesson. Sometimes, when a person is pushed to the absolute edge, they will cling to the very hand that locked the cage just to feel a pulse. That night, she cracks the door open and Vincenzo is already there, waiting. Vincenzo just slowly looks up from his Italian newspaper. He does not say a word to her, because when you hold all the cards, you do not need to shout. That dead stare tells her everything. She can walk out, but he will follow, and Giorgio will know. So, completely defeated, she shuts the door and goes back to her room. She pulls out this tiny notebook from her bag. It used to be for harmless things, like old addresses and art notes. Now, it is her survival manual. She starts writing down blind spots and hallway lengths. The saddest part of this whole scene is the life lesson it teaches us. She is not planning some heroic, movie-style escape. When the walls close in, our first instinct is usually just learning how to live in the cage. Day 3, and Vittorio comes bearing gifts. Let's pause and unpack this trap together. He brings her these incredibly expensive shopping bags, but he does not order her to wear the clothes. A basic thug would just yell at her to put them on. But Vittorio is playing chess. He casually mentions her own clothes will not last the week, making his complete control sound like a practical favor. And Luca? She is already studying his face the way she used to study old books, trying to read his moods to stay safe. It is brilliant, and it is sickening. The lesson here is one we all need to remember. When someone truly wants to own your life, the trap never looks like a rusty cage. It usually looks like a perfectly tailored safety net. Luca finally asks when this nightmare ends, and Vittorio just flatly tells her it ends when he decides it ends. He does not say it like a villain, just like a guy reading the weather report. She opens the bags, and there are no pretty dresses inside. Just practical, dark clothes made to move quietly. The message is painfully clear. She is not a trophy on a shelf. She is a pet learning to survive in a penthouse. By day 3, the sheer size of the place is driving her insane. She is literally memorizing how the sunlight moves across the rug just to feel something. The life lesson here is absolute. You can dress a prison up in imported marble and expensive leather, but a cage is still a cage if you cannot walk out the front door. You can practically feel Luca's hypervigilance crawling out of the screen right here. Those penthouse ceilings are so high they make her look like a ghost, and the huge windows are just a cruel joke. Even the fancy library feels like a hospital waiting room, smelling like harsh chemicals and fake leather. She feels like an old coat shoved into the back of a closet. But human beings are incredibly stubborn creatures. Since she cannot control her freedom, she controls the math. She tracks every single move Vincenzo makes. 40 minutes on the dot every time, logged right into her little notebook. The life lesson is powerful. Strip a person of their freedom, and their brain will turn pure terror into cold, calculated data just to survive. Now, Luca tries to play the game herself. She calls her boss, Madame Aureli, and puts on this desperate, raspy cough, acting like she caught the flu. But listen to the silence on the other end of that phone line. Aureli is a sharp, street-smart woman. She instantly knows this whole sick-in-bed story is complete garbage. She even fires back a sarcastic joke about the flu preferring luxury hotels, but she doesn't push for the real story. It is a brutal moment of missed connection, and the life lesson here hits right in the chest. We always think our clever little lies are protecting the people we love. But the bitter truth is, those lies are usually just the bricks we use to seal ourselves inside our own solitary confinement. Madame Aurélie doesn't pry. Instead, she just tells Luca to drink water and come back in one piece. It is her quiet way of saying, "I know you are in trouble, just survive." Luca hangs up fast before she starts crying. Then, watch what she does next. She refuses to let the maids in and washes her only shirt in the bathroom sink, hanging it up on the heated rack. It seems totally pointless, right? But it is actually a desperate survival reflex. She is a woman who has lost her entire world, so she claims the sink. It is the saddest kind of victory. The lesson here is universally true. When someone rips away your power over the big things, you will fight to the death to control the tiny things, just to remind yourself you are still human. Vittorio shows up completely unannounced, and you can see Luca's heart drop. She is sitting barefoot on the floor, pretending to read, just trying to hide how terrified she is. Vincenzo locks down the hall, and Vittorio walks right into her space, holding a little box tied with a dark ribbon. He looks exhausted, suit jacket open, sleeves rolled up like he just finished burying someone. He says good evening. And Luca, she actually fires back, sarcastically calling him by his Mafia rank. Vittorio just stops and smiles at her defiance, telling her to open the damn box. Here is the final, bitter lesson. Sarcasm isn't bravery. When we are backed into a corner with zero power, we just use sharp words to pretend we still have teeth. Let's hit pause for a second, guys. Look at what is actually happening here between Vittorio and Luca. She genuinely thinks she is just asking a question, asking if this gift is an order. But Vittorio? His voice drops. He calls it a request, but it hits her ears like a heavy iron gate slamming shut. Inside that butcher paper is a super rare edition of a book she casually named, dropped to a hotel manager days ago. He did not just hear her, he indexed her soul. Look at his face. That is not a guy swooning. That is a hunter, watching the trap snap on a rabbit's leg. It is twisted, but it is real. Here is a brutal life lesson for you. When someone hands you exactly what you have always wanted on a silver platter, you better pause and ask what piece of your soul it costs to keep it. It is agonizing to watch this play out, because we have all been there trying to act tough when we are secretly terrified. Luca tries to flex. She throws shade, comparing this terrifying mobster to those snobby, pretentious art collectors she deals with at the gallery. She actually asks if he buys off every woman he kisses with rare books. She thinks she is drawing a line in the sand. But watch Vittorio's mouth. Just that tiny, barely there smirk. He absolutely loves this. He leans in, sucking all the air out of her personal space. She thought she was setting a boundary, but she just showed him exactly how to play her. Here is a simple, meaningful life lesson we all learn eventually. Throwing fake bravery in the face of a real predator does not scare them off. It just seasons the meat. This is the exact moment the irony breaks your heart. Vittorio points at her chest. She is verbally rejecting his gift, but her arms are wrapped around that book like a newborn baby. She whispers excuses about it being literature, not a bribe. He lets her keep that little illusion, because it keeps her trapped. Then he tells her to put on a black dress. He does not scream. He just calmly drops the name Marchetti. He feeds her a terrifying story about a rival seeing her face, dragging her into his dangerous world. He is manufacturing a crisis, so they have to survive it together. The sad life lesson here? Shared trauma, even when it is completely fabricated by the person hurting you, will bond you to them faster than joy ever could. Stick with me here, because his manipulation goes totally nuclear. He tells Luca the streets are watching, and she has to play his property so they survive. She gets mad, calling herself scenery. But he corrects her. He calls her his shield. That word is perfectly designed to make her feel important, while hiding the fact that shields are meant to be destroyed. She swallows her pride, puts on the dress, and keeps her crooked glasses on like some tragic badge of rebellion. When she walks out, he is just staring quietly at the city skyline. No loud bragging, no tough guy act. The life lesson here is chilling. The quietest person in the room is always the one you should fear the most. They do not need to bark. They already own the cage. Let's pause on this scene in the penthouse. The guy just radiates this heavy, suffocating stillness, the kind you only get if you have spent a lifetime being underestimated and surviving it. Luca says she is ready, and Vittorio deliberately makes her wait a split second before acknowledging her. It is a classic sickening way to train someone to beg for validation. They hop into a literal armored car, driving through streets, completely cleared out by mob money. They end up at this sterile restaurant, sitting across from the Marchetti matriarch, who is dripping in antique rings and old blood money. Luca has no idea she just walked onto a chessboard. Here is a simple, meaningful life lesson to remember. The second you step into someone else's carefully rigged game, you stop being a person. You become a pawn. Watch how the old matriarch instantly goes for the throat. She switches languages right out of the gate, purely to see if Luca breaks. But Luca holds her gaze and gives a firm handshake, trying so hard to look competent. And this is the tragedy of it. All she is actually trying to make Vittorio proud. Then you have Tommaso, sitting there with eyes that miss absolutely nothing. Vittorio already warned her about him, planting that us against the world seed. Tommaso acts like a sweet old grandpa, rolling Luca's last name around in his mouth, pretending he cannot hear well. But do not be fooled. The lesson here is simple. People often mistake manners for kindness. But in a criminal's world, politeness is just a disguised weapon used to pick your locks. Tommaso plays the frail, deaf old man routine perfectly. But hit pause and look at Luca's eyes. She instinctively darts a look at Vittorio before she answers. She sees his hand tighten around his wine glass, and her own shoulders immediately tense up. She is literally syncing her heartbeat to her captor's approval. She repeats her name softly, treating Tommaso like a confused child. Suddenly, the matriarch laughs, completely breaking the tension, and asks Luca about her obscure manuscript restoration work. Luca actually smiles, a real, genuine smile, because she finally feels safe in her element. It breaks your heart to watch. Here is a devastating life lesson. Human beings are so deeply starved to be seen and understood. We will happily laugh and bond with the exact same monsters who are preparing to eat us. You and I have to appreciate the cruel irony of this dinner. Luca grabs a cloth napkin and starts passionately showing off stitching techniques, completely lost in her element. For 15 solid minutes, she holds the most dangerous woman in the city spellbound, talking about copper pigments. But she is completely blind to the trap closing around her. Beside her, Vittorio has stopped eating. He is just staring at her, his brain calculating exactly how much money and leverage her unique skills can make him. Tommaso? He is quietly taking mental notes of every word she says. She thinks she is winning them over. The absolute hardest life lesson you can learn is this. The exact moment you finally feel comfortable and safe in a predator's house is the second figure out they fear exactly how to exploit you. Deep down, Luca's subconscious is ringing the alarm bells, but she is desperately hitting the snooze button. She realizes she never once told anyone at that table about her specific university or her archive work. Yet, when the matriarch brought it up, Vittorio did not even flinch. His face did not show surprise, because he already dug up her entire life story before they ever met. On the agonizingly tense ride back, the silence is deafening. Finally, Vittorio throws her a tiny crumb of praise. He tells her she did well, validating her worth. She feels relieved, completely missing the nightmare she is in. It brings up a really bitter life lesson. Sometimes the people who step up to protect us from the wolves are actually just wolves themselves, wearing a better tailored suit. Now we hit the physical stage of this twisted game. Back in the car, Vittorio lets his finger barely brush against hers. Luca immediately tells herself it was just a bump in the road. She willfully ignores the fact that a guy like him never does anything by accident. At her bedroom door, he reaches up and stops a millimeter away from her face. He lets that electric tension hang there, flooding her nervous system, and then he pulls back. He leaves her completely starved for it. She leans against the closed door, gasping, realizing she actually wanted him to come inside. The life lesson here is terrifying but true. The strongest prisons are not built with iron bars and guards. They are built out of our own desperate, deeply buried desires for human connection. It is not the mobsters that terrify Luca anymore. It is her own dark cravings. A whole week melts away inside this gorgeous penthouse. By Sunday, the light is soft and warm. Vittorio walks out onto the balcony, ditching his intimidating suits for a simple white-seat shirt, with the sleeves rolled up. He is deliberately projecting this fake, gentle vulnerability. He stands close enough to invite a moment, but far enough away to deny it. He is becoming her only piece in the very nightmare he created. Here is a life lesson we all need to wake up to. The real monsters in this world rarely show up kicking down your door with bared teeth. Usually, they show up with rolled-up sleeves, softly leaning on a balcony, just waiting for you to walk right into their open jaws. Let's unpack this final, devastating move together. Vittorio casually leans over and asks about her mother, dropping the word Philadelphia. Luca freezes. She knows she never told him where she grew up, but her brain scrambles to protect her, convincing herself she must have let it slip, because the alternative is too horrifying to face. Then, she just breaks. She hands him all her trauma, her dad dying in a crash, her mom fading away from a broken heart 2 years later. By giving him her deepest, most painful secrets, she completely locks her own psychological handcuffs. It brings us to the hardest life lesson of all. In our desperate, blind search for a safe place to land, we will often hand our sharpest knives directly to our own executioners. Listen up. We need to hit pause right here and look at this technique, because it is an absolute masterclass in psychological manipulation. Vittorio does not interrupt her pain. He uses clinical, dead silence, a trick, to make you spill your darkest secrets just to fill the quiet. He gives zero cheap apologies. He just lets Luca bleed out, talking about her mom's crushed dreams of the Amalfi Coast, the faded photos, and that white chapel over the sea in Ravello. The bitterest part? By absorbing her tragedy, Vittorio makes himself the only vault for her grief. A true narcissist does not even have to speak to own you. They just listen. Here is the lesson for you and me. Real empathy shares the heavy weight of your pain, but weaponized silence just measures your open wounds to see where the knife fits best. Picture this scene with Zoe. She is staring right at Giorgio, the guy who holds her entire future in his hands. You think his world is small until you are trapped inside it, and honestly, it is beautifully terrifying. She looks at his jawline. It is so tense it could snap wire, not from some sweet, fond memory. That is the physical weight of a guy running a hidden, dirty empire. Then, in a split second of fake warmth, he drops his shoulders, gives this perfect sideways smile, and becomes Prince Charming again. Drink your tea, he tells her. And what does she do? She drinks it. He stands out on the balcony while the Paris sky burns pink behind him. Through that glass, you see a man wound so tight he might shatter. The tragic thing is, we always obey the monsters who smile nicely at us. Zoe completely misreads the situation. She thinks Giorgio is just tired, because she has no idea she is a pawn in a bigger game. Night falls, and she eats dinner alone while he locks himself away with Vincenzo. It is a textbook isolation tactic, designed to make her feel small. She goes to bed early, trying to bury the memories of Bastian, the guy who broke her before. But trauma never just vanishes, does it? She wakes up screaming. In her nightmare, Bastian is standing in her old apartment with a spare key, demanding she come home. She shoots up in bed, her heart absolutely hammering against her ribs. But before she can scream again, the door cracks open. Giorgio's voice drifts in from the dark corridor. Just a voice and a shadow. The saddest part is trading one nightmare for another, falsely believing you are finally safe. Company or silence? He asks in a low, quiet voice. You choose. Stick with me here, guys, because this is where the psychological trap snaps completely shut. By giving her the illusion of a choice, he builds a fake foundation of safety. She swallows hard, realizing he is waiting for permission to enter. Silence, she whispers. The door clicks shut, but stays unlocked. She lies there, wide awake. Hours later, she creeps across the floor and presses her ear to the wood. And guess what? He is still out there. She hears the slow, steady breathing of a man standing guard without asking for a single reward. She goes back to bed, holding her pillow, falling right into his hands. It is tragic, really. The moment an abuser offers protection, the victim starts writing a twisted romance just to survive the night. Morning light hits, and the brutal reality of her situation comes into focus. She opens her door and almost steps on a fresh glass of water. Right next to it is a blank, perfectly folded, white handkerchief. It is not romantic. It is the cold, physical evidence of an apex predator predicting her exact emotional breakdown. She just stands there, totally paralyzed, staring at the glass as this heavy pressure builds behind her eyes. She tries to shove the feelings down, telling herself out loud that mobsters do not leave water because they care. They do it to protect their investments. She repeats this 3 times to keep her sanity intact, but the awful truth is, she does not believe it. Not even a little. The hardest lesson in life is realizing that sometimes the only person who treats you gently is the one planning your ruin. Fast forward to the afternoon. She walks right into the library, thinking it is empty, and catches him changing his shirt. She freezes, staring straight at this massive, jagged scar on his left shoulder. This is not some neat hospital surgery. This is a messy, brutal bullet wound, patched up in some dirty basement. Giorgio turns around with this chilling, absolute calm. He knows exactly what she is looking at. She stammers out an apology from the doorway, but he just waves it off, doing up his buttons with the spooky precision of a hitman. Before she can stop herself, she blurts out, "What was it?" "The scar." He does not even blink. "Another life," he says, burying his violent past like it is yesterday's trash. It is wild, right? We fall for people who hide their demons, thinking we are the ones who can finally fix them. He does this perfectly timed little pause, a move she already knows too well. He stares her down over the rims of his reading glasses. For a split second, she feels this twisted urge to laugh, because they both have crooked glasses, but the humor dies fast. Just that, he repeats, his voice dropping into that dangerous register. But she refuses to back down. She steps away from the doorway, knowing that staying put means surrendering. She looks him in the eye and says she is going back to work for Madame Aurielli on an urgent manuscript. "You will go with Vincenzo," he fires back instantly. She argues she can fix old books without a bodyguard. Giorgio's voice goes dead flat. "I know. But you are not leaving without him." It hurts to watch, doesn't it? She thinks she is fighting for her freedom, but she is already negotiating her own cage. She is standing just 2 feet away, pinned between his massive frame and these huge bookshelves. His entire vibe is just suffocatingly dangerous. The tension here is almost unbearable. He does this slow, deliberate scan of her face, checking her glasses, dropping to her mouth, and finally locking onto her eyes. "Very well," she whispers, giving in to his demand about Vincenzo. Nobody moves. The room gets so quiet you can hear his breathing, smelling like bergamot, old paper, and pure wealth. Then, so slowly, his right hand comes up. He does not even touch her. He just hovers his thumb in the empty air, tracing the exact line of her jaw. Sometimes, the most terrifying control is not a tight grip. It is the haunting promise that they can touch you whenever they want, but choose to leave you waiting. She tilts her head up. It is not a choice. It is her body completely giving up the fight. He closes the gap, resting his forehead against hers for 3 agonizingly long seconds. His breath hits her lip, and it is sheer torture for her. His hand grips her waist, right over her clothes, not to hold her down, but to keep her from collapsing. Her breathing goes completely out of control, like she just ran a marathon. He shuts his eyes and whispers something in Italian she only catches the word perdona. Forgive me. And then he pulls back. Just one tiny step, but the wall slams right back down between them. Vincenzo will take you Wednesday, he orders softly. 7 in the morning. This is the cruelty of a master manipulator. They pull you close enough to feel their heartbeat, only to leave you freezing in the aftermath. She bolts from that library, before her entire nervous system just completely shuts down. She storms down the hall, slams her bedroom door, and leans her forehead right against the wood. She is practically yelling at herself inside her own head, trying to fight off the delusion. He does not want you, she tells herself. He is just protecting an asset. It is business. Cold-blooded predators do not actually fall for girls like you. She repeats it 3 times, desperately trying to believe it, but she is already too far gone. And then, the ultimate plot twist hits. She hears a low, slow sound coming through the door. It is him. He is breathing right on the other side, leaning against her only line of defense. We can lie to our brains all day, but when the monster is waiting outside your door, your heart is the first thing to surrender. She knows he is out there. She does not even need to see him. She watches the brass doorknob shake just a tiny bit, twice, from the heavy pressure of his thumb. But he never turns it. He just stands there, executing this silent, terrifying siege for what feels like hours. Finally, the tension breaks. The heavy thud of his boots fades down the hallway. She is way too terrified to open the door and check if he is really gone. Fast forward, and Wednesday arrives under a dull, gray sky. It has been 2 full days since the library incident, and they have been avoiding each other like ghosts in the hallway. She is awakes before the sun even comes up, sitting on her bed with those crooked glasses, clutching her open notebook. The quietest moments in a house like that are always the loudest, echoing with everything they refuse to say. You and I are going to look at this together and decide what her actions really mean right now. She is in full panic mode, timing the security guards out the window 3 separate times. She is frantically writing an escape plan in tiny letters, completely paranoid that she is losing her grip on reality. Then the phone rings at 8 sharp. It is Madame Aurieli, sounding brittle and exhausted, begging for her help before noon, to check out some old French book for a rich collector. For the love you have for books, the old woman pleads. Zoe hangs up the phone, knowing she has to go. But guys, she is not running out that door for the love of old paper. She is fleeing the dangerous, sick attachment she is forming with Giorgio. Sometimes we run into the fire, just to escape the terrifying comfort of the dark. Picture this scene like a high-tension thriller. The guy walks in, dripping from the shower, looking like an absolute menace, right? Coat open, owning the space. She sees him in the glass, and boom, she forgets who she even is. That's the terrifying power of a narcissist. You and I know exactly what it also feels like when someone sucks the oxygen out of a room. She tells him she's got an urgent job for the Lisbon collector. Knowing he'll hate it, he just stares at the rain. The silence isn't empty. It's a loaded gun. It's funny how we hold our breath around people who don't even care if we suffocate. The lesson? Never let anyone else's storm dictate the weather in your own mind. Let's pause right here and look at this control disguised as protection. He finally speaks, laying down the law like a Sicilian general mapping out a war zone. Vincenzo on guard. Car at the curb. Be back before dark. She tries to push back, saying she isn't a little kid, but he hits her with that freezing gray stare. You are my responsibility. Ouch. He thinks he's her savior, but he's just building her a prettier cage. She grabs her things and runs off to her workshop, breathing in the smell of old paper and stale tea like a drowning woman finding a pocket of air. But here is the tragic irony. Freedom is an illusion if you still have to ask for permission. A golden cage is still a prison. Look at the setup outside the bookstore. It is textbook mob paranoia. Vincenzo is out there, playing Secret Service, parking the car facing the street, checking every mirror, whispering in Italian on his phone. But here is where the dread really creeps in. She spots another car, a mysterious black sedan, just sitting in the alley. Now, any normal person would sound the alarm, but her brain completely hits the override button. She pretends it is just a coincidence to protect her own sanity. We do this all the time, don't we? We ignore the red flags because acknowledging them means our world is unsafe. But ignoring a predator doesn't make it disappear. When your gut screams that something is wrong, listen to it. So instead of fleeing, she goes into total denial mode. The creepy car outside? Just some random Paris traffic, right? She dives headfirst into the dusty, quiet world of the bookshop. Her boss, Aurelie, is chatting about catching a cold, which makes everything feel so incredibly normal. Our girl starts obsessing over the crumbling spine of an old Portuguese manuscript, checking the ink, burying herself in the work. It is brilliant cinematography, really. Her hands are moving on autopilot, building a little fortress of routine, while a hurricane gathers right outside her window. The saddest part? We all use our daily routines as emotional armor. But a busy schedule will never protect you from the reality knocking at your door. For just one fleeting moment, she actually finds peace. Aurelie sets down a cup of tea and dryly comments on the mobster's expensive shoes outside, which is honestly a hilarious way to cope with having a hitman at your front door. The sunset is painting the bookstore in this gorgeous, golden, cinematic light, making you almost believe everything is going to be okay. And then bam, the deadbolt clicks. Vincenzo's voice drops into this terrifying guttural register, barking at her to get back inside. You and I know exactly what that tone means. The illusion is dead. It is a harsh reminder that sometimes the safest feeling moments are just the deep breath before the plunge. Peace is usually just a lie we tell ourselves until the next disaster hits. Let's hit pause on the action here. She makes the ultimate horror movie mistake. She looks outside. 3 guys are coming fast, packing heat, with their car trunk popped open like an empty coffin. This is the exact moment 99% of people would completely freeze up in terror. But she flips the script. Instead of cowering, she screams at Aurelie to lock the back door and turns the bookstore itself into a weapon. She slams her entire body into this massive, solid oak bookshelf, sending 20 years of heavy leather archives crashing down on the attackers. It is absolutely wild to watch. It proves a bitter truth when the monsters come for you. Playing the helpless victim won't save you. You have to become the avalanche. The scene devolves into pure chaos. Wood is splintering. Old pages are flying everywhere. Glass is blowing out. And Vincenzo is screaming orders in Italian. Then, the nightmare becomes physical. One of the thugs grabs her ribs, jerking her violently by the hair. But here is the brilliant part of her character arc. She goes feral. She taps into the darkest, most primitive survival instinct and bites down on the guy's wrist like a cornered animal. She is funneling every ounce of grief from losing her dad, every ounce of rage from her toxic past, right into her teeth. She tastes blood, and the guy howls in pain. The beautiful, ugly lesson here? You cannot nicely ask for respect from a predator. True boundaries are violently enforced. Her feral move actually works, but the guy violently throws her off. She crashes hard onto the stone floor, scraping her skin raw, her glasses flying off, so the whole world turns into a blurry, terrifying mess. And through that haze, we get a front row seat to how the Mafia really works. Vincenzo drops one guy in 2 ruthless seconds, but then the big bad arrives. Giorgio's car comes screaming the wrong way down a Parisian street, breaking every rule because the city basically belongs to him. And notice this, he does not run to help her. He marches, slow, cold, holding a weapon, carrying the suffocating gravity of the Grim Reaper himself. Real power never sprints, guys. It just takes its time, knowing you cannot escape its reach. Now watch how flawlessly the movie establishes dominance. Giorgio casually grabs the running attacker and, with zero hesitation, just snaps his arm backwards. The sound design here is brutal, that hollow crack echoing through the alley. Then Giorgio crouches down, his voice completely dead and empty. In perfect French, he tells the bleeding guy to deliver a warning to a rival named Lefra. He's using this broken man like a bloody post-it note to spread pure terror. and just over her shoulder, our girl realizes the other attacker is lying completely motionless on the ground. Dead. We need to understand this about dangerous people. Violence isn't an accident for them. It is just another language, and they speak it incredibly well. The craziest part is what happens next. Absolutely nothing. No police sirens, no screaming. Just cold, mechanical cleanup. She is shaking violently, her nervous system finally crashing after that massive adrenaline spike. Riley is holding her in the wreckage, smelling like tea and old leather, whispering for her to just breathe. Over in the corner, Giorgio and Vincenzo are casually whispering in Italian, like they just finished a business lunch. Then Giorgio walks over. He gently touches her busted lip, his face looking like a carved stone statue. Stick with me here, because this is the trap. This is exactly how toxic trauma bonds get forged. We let the monster play the hero, confusing a tiny moment of mercy for genuine affection. You have got to respect the absolute steel spine on Aurelie. This older woman doesn't panic or ask those useless questions like, "Are you okay?" She looks right past the blood and the tears, straight into the girl's soul, and asks one thing: "Did you bite him?" When the girl nods, you can see Aurelie mentally check a box. The kid has teeth. She's a survivor. Then Aurelie turns her gaze to Giorgio. The Mafia boss is standing there, sleeves ruined, radiating this icy, suppressed murder vibe. But the old bookshop owner doesn't even flinch. They just stare each other down in this incredible, silent power struggle. It is a beautiful reminder that the most dangerous person in the room is rarely the loudest. It's the one who stays calm in the fire. Honestly, Aurelie is immune to his mobster charisma, using the exact same tone she uses to grade a dusty manuscript. She interrogates this cartel kingpin. She demands to know if he brought this violence to her door. Giorgio says absolutely nothing, which we all know means yes. Then Aurelie actually threatens him, hinting she's got heavy hitters of her own, and orders him to take care of the girl's wounds. And Giorgio? He actually blinks. This terrifying boss respects the pushback. He just tells them to get in the car. But fast forward to his multi-million-dollar penthouse, our girl is still shaking like a leaf. It is a brutal, biological truth. You can lock all the doors and turn on the lights, but your nervous system never forgets the dark. Back at the apartment, she is totally checked out, staring at her trembling hands like they belong to a ghost. Giorgio locks the place down, sends the muscle away, and creeps toward her like she's a broken glass doll. He drops to his knees in this masterclass of fake vulnerability. But this is where the movie pays off. She doesn't fall for it. Instead of melting into his arms, she physically recoils, pressing herself deep into the sofa cushions to get away from him. She drops the polite act and just tells him straight to his face, "You are not a good man. You and I need to appreciate this victory. The moment you stop buying into a toxic person's fake apology, you win. That rejection is the exact moment you finally take your own power back. Look at her here. She is not backing down. She throws the raw truth right in his face, reminding him of the sickening sound of that bone snapping in half. She refuses to let him dress up his brutality as some dark romance, laying bare her own 10 years of living through absolute hell. Night terrors have taught her to speak the language of violence perfectly. But Giorgio? He does not flinch. He weaponizes his surrender. He stays on his knees, his voice perfectly calm, swearing he will not stand till she gives the word. You and I need to pause here and look at this dynamic. Giving someone a fake sense of power is just a way to lock the psychological cage from the inside. The hardest lesson we can learn is that sometimes the most dangerous traps look exactly like open doors. Her mind is practically tearing itself apart right now. Minutes ago, those hands were strong enough to rip a heavy bookcase down and draw blood from a killer. Now, they are shaking just from looking at a powerful man pretending to be weak. Her rage does not disappear. It just twists into something far more dangerous. She whispers a single word for him to stay. Giorgio stays perfectly still on the carpet, his tailored suit ruined by the blood of his true nature. Slowly, he takes off her broken glasses. forcing her to look him dead in the eye without a shield. Then he softly asks if he can touch her. You and I must recognize a brutal truth here. The second a monster stops demanding and starts asking for permission, we drop our swords. False respect disarms us faster than weapons. She gives him that consent without even putting up a fight. It is absolutely heartbreaking to watch her cave like this, but you cannot blame her. When you have spent your whole life expecting a fist, a gentle hand feels like an absolute miracle, even if that hand just finished destroying someone else. She nods her head, and in that split second, the power dynamic is set in stone forever. He did not take her boundaries by force. He just waited patiently until she handed over the keys. It makes you realize how easily we betray our own survival instincts when we are completely exhausted. The simplest life lesson here is that extreme exhaustion makes us settle for anything that even remotely looks like peace, no matter how incredibly toxic the actual source might be. Stick with me here, because we really need to break down what Zoe is going through. She is staring down at Giorgio, a pure narcissist, kneeling on the floor, with another guy's blood soaking into his expensive sleeve. He throws out an apology, playing the vulnerable card perfectly. Zoe replies with an empty voice, ticking off the years her life was shattered by violence. Her old abuser never used his fists, but he tortured her mind every single day. Yet she looks at Giorgio and admits the scariest thing of all. No man has ever used violence to protect her before. That right there is how a trauma bond takes deep root. She realizes that violence usually only crushes the weak. It is a harsh reminder that our deepest wounds leave us desperate for a protector, even a predatory one. Zoe finally reaches out, pressing her shaking fingers against his wrist. His pulse is completely steady, a terrifying sign of just how normal this chaos is to him. She is already making excuses for his brutality, convincing herself that all this bloodshed was just a twisted form of protection. This is classic Stockholm Syndrome, watching a victim paint a predator with the colors of a savior. Giorgio murmurs that she owes him absolutely nothing, which is the ultimate trick to make her feel indebted forever. She completely drops her guard, resting her forehead against his until their breathing matches. His hand wraps around the back of her neck, claiming his territory. She breathes in his scent of fresh linen, hiding in the illusion. We constantly confuse the absence of pain with true safety. Let's take a closer look together. Notice how the space in that massive penthouse suddenly feels like a tiny, suffocating box. It perfectly mirrors the psychological trap snapping shut around her mind. Giorgio speaks first, taking full advantage of her hesitation. He claims she deserves to know who he really is, dressing up his dark confession as emotional vulnerability. Still kneeling, he uses physical surrender to hide that he is pulling every string. He drops the bomb in a low voice, admitting he has run a ruthless crime family since he was 28. He feeds her pieces of truth to keep her blind to the rest. By pointing out her shaking hands, he plays the merciful king. The lesson is simple. Manipulators will always offer a comforting lie to steal your bitter truth. Let us hit pause right here, because this is where the trap snaps shut. Giorgio brings up a new threat just to play the hero, swearing on that scar of his to keep her safe. It is a theatrical move to make her completely dependent. When Zoe asks why he cares, she is desperate for real human connection. He just gives a cold smirk and says it is because she threw herself at him. Her mind is so worn down she completely misses the red flags, romanticizing his cruelty like a sacred oath spoken in a dark cathedral. It breaks your heart to watch, but that is the brutal truth of human nature. When someone is starving for a tiny drop of security, they will look at the steel bars of a prison cell and call it a loving embrace. Watch how she reaches out to him first. It is a deep drive to keep the monster happy. He takes her hand with a heavy finality, locking in their unspoken deal. Standing in the dark, she cups his face. She feels the rough stubble on his jaw and the freezing Paris wind, and she leans her forehead against his. All that life-saving fear that kept her alive simply vanishes. She whispers that she knows he is lying, but says it like she does not care. Giorgio closes his eyes, giving nothing away. She just stares at his dark lashes, using his handsome face to excuse the killer hiding underneath. Her voice does not even shake. She is completely checked out of reality now. It is a harsh reminder. We will almost always choose a beautiful lie over a terrifying truth. By telling him she does not want the truth, Zoe is actively helping him build her trap. It is pure survival instinct. Giorgio lets out a shaky breath, faking emotional weakness to make her feel validated. When he finally kisses her, do not be fooled. There is zero real passion here. It is slow, cold, and calculated to do maximum psychological damage. Notice his hand. It goes right to the back of her neck. It looks like affection, but it is pure ownership. He strokes her cheek, testing the waters, mapping out how much ground she has surrendered. And she lets him do it. She gives him the green light for everything. It is the darkest trick in the book. The absolute best way someone is to make them believe they were the ones who chose to hand over the keys. Stick with me here, because this is where her independence dies. Giorgio pulls back, locking his eyes onto hers without her glasses there to protect her. He tells her to follow him. One simple command. She takes his hand and lets him lead her down the same hallway. She spent days obsessively pacing and timing. She used to try to control this space, and now she just hands it over. He bumps the light switch off with his shoulder, throwing her into his dark world as the bedroom door shuts. Hours later, the soft Paris morning light hits the white sheets, making the awful scene look perfectly peaceful. It is honestly terrifying to witness. The greatest tragedy of the human mind is how desperately it will try to paint beautiful pictures on the cold walls of a prison cell. Zoe opens her eyes, and everything looks completely different now. The room is stained by his presence. His shirt on the chair, her glasses folded with a chilling perfection. Through the wall, she hears his deep voice barking orders in Italian, a harsh reminder that this man runs an empire built on violence. And yet, she actually smiles. It is wild to watch. The hallway light stayed dark all night. For the first time in 10 years, her exhausting hypervigilance simply shut off. She did not wake up, panicking at 3 a.m. By throwing herself at a much bigger predator, her nervous system finally decided she was safe. It is a very dark biological joke. Your own brain will gladly shake hands with the devil if it means you finally get a single quiet night of sleep. Watch her closely here. Zoe takes a shaky breath, regressing back to the scared little girl who lost her father. That unhealed wound makes her the perfect target for a fake hero. She traces her fingers over her arm, trying to ground herself in this quiet Sunday, amazed she is still breathing. The illusion that everything is fine is incredibly strong. The door swings open without a sound. Classic predator move. Giorgio strolls in with hot coffee and a fancy book, playing the sweet caretaker. He wears dark trousers and an unbuttoned white shirt, hair wet from the shower. It is a brilliant disguise. He is using a peaceful morning to paint over the blood on his hands. Always remember, the most dangerous people in the world rarely look like monsters. Let's just pause right here and look at Gio standing in that doorway. He is playing the absolute classic megalomaniac card, making Zoe feel like the chosen one. He hands her the coffee, and it is made with terrifying perfection, the exact ratio of milk she gets at her neighborhood bakery. When she asks how he knew, his answer should make her run for the hills. He casually admits he watched her drink it 3 times, memorizing her routine by day 2. If you or I heard that, we would call the police. But Zoe? She is so trauma-bonded she thinks it is profound care. She actually smiles and takes a sip, locking in her own trap. Here is the bitter truth we all need to remember. Obsession loves to dress itself up as devotion, and it is usually too late when we notice the disguise. Look at the rare book sitting between them on the bed. It is his physical apology, and she eats it up like it is the greatest gift on earth. It is heartbreaking how smoothly he overrides her reality. He casually mentions he has rearranged her entire schedule, and she blindly accepts the loss of her freedom. Then the tone shifts. He brings up Bastian, stating coldly that he handled the threat. He spins a fairy tale where he is her noble shield, completely glossing over the fact that he is the actual danger. And the real tragedy? Zoe looks at him and says she believes him. Her mind has completely surrendered. She is looking straight at a violent dictator and seeing a guardian angel. It reminds us that when we are desperate enough for safety, we will trust the very fire that is burning our house down. Giorgio tells her to rest, controlling exactly how fast this twisted relationship moves. Zoe tries to make a fragile little joke about avoiding marriage, just begging for a second of normal, light-hearted banter to cut through the suffocating tension. Giorgio meets her with this calculated half-smile, playing along but never dropping his dominance. He agrees to no marriage right now, giving her the pathetic illusion that she has any boundaries left. He claims he only makes small promises because those are the ones he keeps. The guy is a masterclass in fake humility, and it works flawlessly. Completely overwhelmed by this fake safety, she leans in and kisses his shoulder. It is domestic intimacy put in a microwave of trauma. A solid lesson here. Trust built in absolute terror is not trust at all. It is just survival. He rests his chin on her head, breathing her in like he owns the patent on her scent. Fast forward, and Zoe is walking into the freezing marble of the penthouse kitchen, wearing his oversized dress shirt. You and I both know what that means. She is literally wearing his identity. Giorgio follows right behind, dropping a heavy, possessive hand on her waist. The speed of his entitlement should be a massive red flag, but to Zoe, it is just a warm blanket. And then you see Vincenzo, the enforcer, standing at the counter in a dark suit, casually reading the morning paper. The contrast is completely absurd. Zoe is barefoot and vulnerable, making a cozy little home for herself inside a fortified military compound. It teaches us a tough lesson. Normalizing the abnormal is a dangerous, losing game. Let us take a moment to look around this predator ecosystem. Vincenzo glances up from his paper, his face locked in that permanent, dead-eyed stare. He formally calls Giorgio the Don, a freezing reminder of exactly who these people are. Giorgio fires back in rapid Italian, sounding like a guy shooting the breeze with an old buddy. Zoe has no idea what they are saying, but she comfortably drinks in the vibe. Vincenzo turns the page, shoots Zoe a tiny fraction of a smile, and wishes her a good morning in French, pointing her to the breadbasket. And guys, the crazy part is that Zoe actually laughs. It is a real, breathless sound of joy. She is completely assimilated. She is finding true comfort with men who could end her life in a heartbeat. It shows us that sometimes the darkest places offer the warmest illusions. Just watch her sitting there in her temporary sanctuary. Sanctuary, she sees his shirt. One tipster, Jaster's couple, doing that classic Stockholm the Castor safekant where you sound inside the monster to feel safe. Giorgio is leaning right there, radiating this fake domestic peace while the sun hits the floor. But then, hit pause. Right in this quiet moment, her brain finally cracks the code. She flashes back to their very first day in the elevator. Before she ever mentioned the guy in the hallway, Giorgio casually dropped his full name, Bastian Lev. He already had the target filed away in his cold, calculating brain. It is devastating to watch her realize she was played from minute one. It is a haunting truth we all face eventually. Our minds will eagerly bury the brightest red flags just to keep a fragile heart from breaking. Look closely at her physical reaction right here. She slowly puts down her coffee cup and just stares at the side of Giorgio's face. He is putting on an absolute masterclass as the ultimate protector, rubbing his thumb in circles on her back to cement that trauma bond. The horrifying realization that he set her up is burning on her tongue for 2 agonizing seconds. But she swallows it. You and I are screaming at the screen, asking why she stays quiet. It is because she finally feels happy, and to a broken person, happiness is terrifying. It means you finally have something to lose. She locks the truth in a mental vault. We do this all the time, choosing a comfortable, beautiful lie over a reality that would destroy us. But remember, the body keeps the score and never ever forgets the deception. So she just files that horrifying red flag away in her mental filing cabinet, right next to the emergency exits. It looks like domestic bliss, but it is pure, exhausting hypervigilance. And Giorgio? The guy has the radar of a veteran sociopath. He instantly feels the microscopic shift in her energy. He turns his head and asks if everything is all right. It is a pop quiz to test her loyalty, and she lies right to his face, sealing the deal by kissing his shoulder. He rewards her obedience with a soft kiss on the head. It is textbook operant conditioning happening, right as the sun comes up over Paris. It is incredibly bitter to watch, especially when you realize the life lesson here. True safety is never found in the arms of someone you have to constantly monitor just to survive the rest of the day. Let us move to the second act of this psychological horror show. Stick with me here, because this is where the steel trap finally snaps shut on her leg. 3 weeks of fake, manufactured peace was all it took for her to make the ultimate mistake. She bought into the illusion. Giorgio brought her coffee and shared her bed, perfectly washing away the blood and the debts. She really thought he was her white knight. But listen, megalomaniacs do not rescue people. They acquire them, like rare art or real estate. The man she thought was her safe harbor was the exact shark she should have been swimming away from. It breaks your heart to see it play out. But it teaches us an unforgettable truth. The most dangerous cage in the entire world is the one designed to look exactly like a warm, inviting sanctuary. The final shattering of her mind happens when the physical evidence catches up to her gut instinct. A photograph falls out of that rare book he gave her. It is a picture of Zoe at 16, looking innocent at her graduation, and right there, lurking across the street, is a younger Giorgio. The guy had been quietly hunting his preps for years. The Italian writing on the back is a sick signature, stating that the debt starts here, and she will pay dearly. Her hands turn to ice. You can practically feel her chest cave in under the massive weight of the betrayal. The entire Stockholm fairy tale evaporates in a second, leaving nothing but cold terror. It is the hardest lesson to swallow. You can never truly heal in the exact same environment that broke you in the first place, no matter how sweet the poison tastes.
Zoe's fear of Bastion reveals an important lesson about trauma and the way it shapes a person's instincts. Bastion may not have physically beaten her, but he controlled her through humiliation, clothing choices, phone monitoring, emotional pressure, and public degradation. Because of him, Zoe learned to live with fear long after the relationship ended. She sleeps with the hallway light on for years, showing how deeply psychological control can remain inside the body. This teaches viewers that trauma is not only a memory, it becomes a pattern of survival. When Giorgio steps into her life, Zoe is both afraid of him and drawn to him. That confusion is realistic. People who have lived under control may struggle to recognize the difference between danger and safety, because both can feel intense and overwhelming. Giorgio's protection feels different from Bagione's cruelty, but it still contains elements of control. Locked routines, guarded doors, and decisions made for her, and information withheld.
The educational lesson here is that healing requires more than escaping the original abuser. It requires learning how to recognize healthy boundaries, consent, and emotional safety.
Zoe's body responds to Giorgio's presence before her mind can fully judge it. She feels protected, frightened, attracted, and trapped all at once. That emotional complexity does not make her weak. It makes her human. The story encourages viewers to be patient with people recovering from toxic relationships. Survivors may need time to understand what they feel and why. They may need support, not judgment. The deeper lesson is that trauma can make unhealthy dynamics feel familiar, even comforting. Begins when a person learns to ask, do I feel safe because I am free, or because someone else has taken control?